What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of AKP Sports Talk. As always, I'm Ari here with Korea. It's been a couple of weeks, but we're back now we're about, 10 days away from the season opener in the NFL. So pretty crazy how fast the offseason has gone by. It feels like just yesterday we were starting and there's just training camp in the NFL, and now we're already here at the regular season. Korea, how are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. Look, let's just say it. There's not going to be a single weekend without any kind of football now. Like that's amazing to me. I mean, it's already here. College football. We had week 0. We're getting ready for week 1. I mean, you have the NFL literally almost a week away from the beginning of the 2022-2023 NFL season. Look, I'm excited. It's a great time to just be a football fan because it's back after a long wait.
Yeah, no doubt. So we'll start off by just kind of going through the week 0 recap in college football. We started off with good old Nebraska doing what they do best, blowing 2 double-digit leads, um, kicking onside kick up 11 with all the momentum in the third quarter. Korea, what was your kind of takeaways from that game? And do you think Scott Frost and Fitzgerald, the Northwestern coach, it was a whole lot of mess in Ireland? Everyone got free beer because the machines are broken. It was just a big mess.
Like, look, I'm sorry, Nebraska. How are you going to lose in a different country? Like, you lose so much in the United States that you can't even lose. You can't even win in Ireland. Like, this was a gimme for them. I feel like Nebraska is almost like the Cowboys of the NFL. Like, what can go wrong will go wrong. And here we go again. Scott Frost. You look at Nebraska's team from last year, and you say to yourself, okay, this team was like one win away, just one play away, one possession away, literally throughout the beginning half of the season, heading into the regular season, and then throughout the season, finishing 3-9, missing a bowl game again. Okay. So you think, okay, well, if they're just one play away, I think they'll make the changes necessary, right? Wrong. Scott Frost obviously does not believe in change, and Nebraska is going to be Nebraska. Why are you? I just don't understand. Why are you going for an onside kick? You're up 28-17 in the third quarter. You go for an onside kick. That just derails all your momentum right there. Like, why? You're just giving Northwestern a ton of field position. Like, I got to shout out Ryan Helinski, obviously. He had a great game. So shout out to Northwestern and him. He performed really well, especially in a big game atmosphere on Fox, very early, all the way in Ireland. So it was great to see like a big turnout for both teams as well. But at the end of the day, this is just bad Nebraska. I mean, how are you going to give them the game like that? And then obviously 2 late interceptions for that Northwestern defense. I mean, the Northwestern, obviously a pretty solid win, obviously coming back in that game. And throughout the first half, it was a little competitive. But at the end of the day, this is just horrible Nebraska football. And you have a gimme game where your offense is looking good. Your defense was looking pretty decent throughout that first, good part of that third quarter. And then everything just fell apart as soon as that onside kick happened. So at this point, you really only got to blame Scott Frost for his play calling right there. And this is just horrible Nebraska. And a lot of people are saying that Nebraska is going to be, one of those teams where, they're going to sneak into the top 25 or, have a good team. But here we go again. This is just good old Nebraska football. When you expect them to do something right, they say, no, we're going to do the opposite and do it wrong. So that was a bad loss. I definitely think that Nebraska will – I know they got to play Oklahoma. I think that's in a couple weeks, so that's obviously not going to be easy. But for Northwestern, this is a solid win. I liked what that offense was doing throughout that second half. Obviously, now they head into some more non-conference play. And for Nebraska, they have 2 easy games, but then they got to play Oklahoma. So this is just bad Nebraska. Horrible to see Nebraska lose in that kind of fashion.
Yeah, it's kind of what some thought was a kind of a new era for Nebraska with Texas transfer Casey Thompson coming in at quarterback, and he has some pretty nice throws early on. I thought they might use him a little bit more as a rusher, but they didn't do that. But then he had the two pretty bad interceptions. One I don't know, were they both late in the game, or I know one was late in the game.
One was the final possession
Yeah,
for Nebraska, and then the other one, I believe, was in the third. I want to say maybe.
yeah. I mean, it wasn't. I'm pretty sure it wasn't in the first half. So, everything was looking pretty good in the first half, except I didn't think Northwestern had the lead at half, I believe, and Nebraska scored twice in a row. That put them up to 11, and then they went for the onside kick, and everything went downhill for them after that. But it just kind of seemed like a game where neither team wanted to win. Whichever team made less mistakes, was going to win that game, and that's pretty much what happened.
Both of them were in the fourth. The first one was like early in the fourth. That's right.
Yeah. Okay, so I guess then we can talk about the night game. That was a disaster. Hawaii went up 7-0 early over Vanderbilt and ended up losing 63-10, I believe was the final score.
Yeah.
It was funny. There's I saw on TikTok, some guy traveled like a long ways away and he had money on the plus 9.5 for the Hawaii just to see them lose by 53 points. So I thought that was funny. But I mean, Hawaii, the new era, Timmy Chang, I believe is the head coach's name. They have like 6 returning players from last year, so basically an entirely new team. Vanderbilt, was I think 2-10 last year. They were really bad, but they were still almost a 10-point favorite in this game. And I took Vanderbilt minus 9.5, and I had slight concerns. Like after they went down 7-0, and then after that, it was literally all Vanderbilt the rest of the game. Did you get to watch any of this game?
Yeah, I watched a little bit of it, and it was just, I mean, I felt so sorry for that guy flying all the way to Hawaii just to watch him get absolutely beat down by 53 at home. Yeah, I mean, this is good Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt is definitely going to be a team that is going to gain a lot of respect this year after a big win on the road, too. No one really had, Vanderbilt really as just, as like a huge favorite in this game. It was kind of mixed both ways. People were taking Hawaii money line, obviously, plus 9.5, and then obviously Vanderbilt minus 9.5 was definitely the favorite. But definitely it was just a good performance on the ground by Mike Wright, that junior the quarterback for the Vanderbilt Commodores. Definitely on the ground. He's a dual threat for a reason. 13 carries for 167, had an 87-yard run. I mean, that's that dual threat that pretty much just exposed Hawaii's defense, and that's pretty much the reason why they lost that game. Hawaii couldn't do anything on offense. I mean, both quarterbacks couldn't even – literally not even quarterback, not even throwing over 200 yards. So just a horrible offensive day for Hawaii. I feel like this is more good Vanderbilt. This is a team that is trying to get respect in college football after kind of being the laughingstock and the embarrassment of the SEC and just one of the embarrassments of college football as a program, losing, having horrible seasons for football. Now to see them get a big win on the road at Hawaii. I mean, it's Hawaii, yes, but, they already have half the win total they had last year. So definitely good Vanderbilt. Maybe a lot of people are saying that, Hawaii is turning a new leaf. Maybe it's Vanderbilt in the end, but definitely great Vanderbilt. Feel sorry for that guy who flew all the way there just to see Hawaii lose in horrible fashion, especially since it's a late night game. So, but yeah, definitely great Vanderbilt. Hawaii, maybe I know Cameron Cooper, WSU transfer, is still listed on that depth chart, and after both quarterbacks, had to really struggle to get muster any kind of offense after their first drive. Maybe it's time for a switch at the quarterback position, bring in the southpaw. So, this is definitely a great Vanderbilt, though.
Yeah, for sure. Were there any games that you wanted to touch on from?
Another game I wanted to touch on was the Illinois Wyoming game. A lot of people were kind of mixed on that money line right there, and a lot of people were kind of seeing Wyoming as maybe they'll make it competitive with Illinois. No, they won't. Illinois dominated, only allowing 6 points on defense, winning 38-6 at home. Personally, I feel like this is just bad Wyoming. I feel like Wyoming, they definitely have a lot of young stars on on their team now. Definitely a bunch of first year guys playing, and I feel they just got exposed. I feel like they just got exposed by a bigger program like in the Big Ten, like an Illinois team, who is not returning a lot, but still has that ability to make it make your first game a living hell, and definitely Illinois did that. And a lot of people are saying, "Oh, is Illinois going to be a contender after a big win like that?" I'm saying no, just because they're still going to be in the Big Ten West, and obviously it's going to be probably dominated by Wisconsin, so or potentially Iowa, whoever wins that Big Ten West. But yeah, definitely horrible Wyoming. I think Wyoming may have an interesting run within the Mountain West Conference, but we'll see how that goes. But yeah, definitely just horrible Wyoming. Just trying to muster some offense, and then UConn covering the spread. Look at them, go UConn, go for them. I mean, only
they're up 14-0.
I know. I was like, UConn, this is you, but I mean, obviously Utah State winning in the end, winning 31-20. So, but still, definitely, it was an interesting week 0 nonetheless. But week 1, the real week 1, is definitely going to be a lot more interesting. We have some intriguing matchups. We'll talk about those later in the week. But yeah, definitely kind of an interesting start to kick off the college football season.
Yeah, there are definitely some fun games, some blowouts, but it's still football at the end of the day, and I think all of us are happy to watch anything, after the whole offseason having nothing to watch. So, and like you said, this weekend we'll have some much better matchups that we'll touch on probably on Friday. But now we'll transition into the NFL world. We'll start off with the news that broke just maybe about an hour or so ago of the 49ers and Garoppolo agreeing to a restructured 1-year contract that will keep them in San Francisco for this year. There's been the rumors all offseason of San Francisco trying to either trade him or potentially release him by tomorrow's deadline to cut the rosters to 53 players. I don't know about you, but I think that this is not I get the idea behind it and that they can keep him as trade bait if a key starter goes down with an injury. But on the other hand, I think it puts an unnecessary amount of pressure on Trey Lance to where if he struggles early in the season, there's going to be a lot of people that want to see Garoppolo, go in for Lance. And I think it's just not necessary. I think it's not needed in that locker room. We already saw last year when Garoppolo started off slow early in the season, people wanted to see Trey Lance come in. Now I think it just puts more pressure on Lance entering his first full season as a starter. I still like Trey Lance. I still think he's going to be good, but I don't think that this is necessary. I get the idea behind it of keeping him for trade bait, and if not, then they let him go after this upcoming season. But yeah, I just don't think it's going to be good for the locker room. But then you can also argue that with how professional Garoppolo's handled everything and Lance as well, that it won't be an issue in this instance. But just in general, I think in the situation where you have a young quarterback taking over for the veteran, there's just going to be a lot more added pressure on Lance that isn't necessarily needed.
Look, honestly, I don't know what the Niners are doing. Am I sad about it? Not really. I mean, the Niners, I feel like they put themselves in this position where they kind of had to keep them, obviously, due to the big roster cut coming tomorrow. But at the same time, they want to keep them for trade value. And it was an impending, weird contract negotiation thing that would happen. But Jimmy G is going to be staying in San Francisco for a year. I definitely agree with you. I don't think this is going to be affecting Trey Lance's fantasy value in any way. Obviously, it's kind of more of just a locker room team value kind of thing there. Obviously, there were so many rumors that Jimmy Garoppolo was going to be traded somewhere off this whole offseason. Teams like Seattle, Indy, Carolina, many teams were mentioned. But now the Niners are in this position where obviously they've said many times that it's Trey Lance's team and that they're building the future around Trey Lance. But at the same time, you have this good old veteran who is going to be on the roster. And then the best part is he's not even practicing with the team. Like in practice, he's on doing his own thing, just kind of getting reps in for when he has trade value. And that's kind of the only reason why the Niners really kept him. But at the same time, it just doesn't feel like it was needed, considering that they could have traded him earlier this offseason. They had plenty of suitors early in the offseason, and it was just because of the whole Deebo Samuel situation that they couldn't really find anything to do. But they already got that scheduled away. It's like, okay, well, they still have a month. Sam Darnold obviously just went down. That was more recent, but still, Carolina was still figuring out their quarterback situation. Seattle was still figuring out theirs, but it was more of a team within the team situation. And hell, the Browns may even have the Browns were even linked to Jimmy Garoppolo as well. And I feel like this is just a kind of a, well, you have to do what you have to do kind of contract, because they obviously Niners want to get some value for him. And right now it's just not, there's no quarterback market for him. There's nowhere unless like a big time starter goes down maybe week 1 now that the preseason's done. And the only real quarterbacks that have been injured to an extent are Sam Darnold and Zach Wilson. And then those replacements have already been found. So like, what is Jimmy really going to be doing? He's just going to be on the bench most of the time, either by himself or maybe, with some teammates. But at the same time, I don't think this is going to be affecting Trey Lance at all. I feel like, and you mentioned the way Jimmy Garoppolo has handled this whole situation. He's handled this very maturely, not being like more of a Ryan Tannehill, kind of like, why is it my responsibility and all that stuff. I feel like, he kind of expected that Trey Lance is probably going to be, the starter after his last year making a NFC championship run, but couldn't get it done in the big game. And so now they really have to move forward and move on to a new quarterback. And at the end of the day, Jimmy G is not a horrible quarterback. He's a respectable quarterback. He's definitely a pocket passer, but he has that accuracy to make some good throws. Just, when it comes to him being clutch, it just doesn't really work well. But at the end of the day, I don't think this is going to be affecting Jimmy, more of Trey Lance and the team, just more of what you went to, like you said, the locker room situation. And maybe we'll see what happens by week 4. Maybe there's a quarterback in the NFL that goes down like week 2 or 3 or something, and they got to find someone to start the game for them. And here comes Jimmy Garoppolo. The Niners may have some trade value for there, but it's more of an if instead of a guarantee. And it just kind of, leaves this in question that, we've been talking about this all off season, and the end result is just a restructured contract. It seems like it was kind of endable if the Niners weren't going to really do anything with him anyways.
Yeah, and one interesting part about the contract is it's worth like a little over $6 million, I believe, but there's incentives that can make it up to like $16 million. So that might also create some added pressure to put him on the field if Lance struggles early. But like we've been saying, both Garoppolo and Lance have handled this very well, and I think Lance will be mature enough to where he won't let it get to him. I think in general, maybe other quarterbacks, it might get to them early if they have someone like Garoppolo right behind them, heading into their first full season as a starter. But yeah, this doesn't impact my opinion on Lance in fantasy this year, but it does maybe make you want to prioritize a backup quarterback just a little bit more, just for that reason, just in case. But yeah, so now we'll move on to some storylines that in fantasy football this year that we're still a little bit uncertain of, and that we're kind of keeping an eye on, like into week 1. So we'll just start off just generally with a few backfields that are a little bit still uncertain. So we'll start off with the Bills backfield. You got Devin Singletary and Zach Moss returning from last year. And then you got James Cook, who they drafted this past April. Late last season, you kind of saw Singletary start to take over that backfield. Moss was kind of starting to become healthy scratch for a number of weeks, kind of in the middle of the season. And then you got the kind of the hype of James Cook in the passing game, potentially eventually taking over the whole backfield. Some people think. Curry, what's your general stance on, and how are you kind of attacking it in fantasy football this year?
Well, in terms of the Bills' backfield in particular, it's a lot more challenging just because that offense is so pass heavy already with Stephon Diggs and an emerging Gabriel Davis along with Dawson Knox. They already have weapons, and Josh Allen can use his legs so much. I feel like the run game for the Bills is kind of like the forgotten afterthought. You already have Devin Singletary, who's kind of assuming to be the lead back in Buffalo, and then you also have Zach Moss, the second year out of Utah, and then James Cook, the rookie out of Georgia. It's just too convoluted. I still feel like that backfield is going to be a committee, and I feel like Devin Singletary is going to be the head of the committee. And I feel like this could be a trend in more in the NFL, just a running back by committee, because a power back, they'll go down maybe week 4 and they'll be out for so long nowadays. And you see how the Bills are more successful with that committee with Singletary and potentially James Cook and Zach Moss, all three of them, a three-headed monster. I feel like it's going to be just good, more fit for their offensive system where they're going to be passing the ball so much, and Josh Allen's going to be using his legs a lot, and that's why I feel like the Bills, from a fantasy standpoint, that backfield is definitely avoidable. I mean, if it's if you're in a position where you kind of have to draft like Devin Singletary, then go for it. Obviously, that's probably going to be like a 0 RB strategy if you see that. But at the same time, that offense is more of a passing offense. And from a running back standpoint, I would stay away from the Bills offense. But just from a football standpoint, it's definitely a three-headed monster. And I feel like it compete with any committee kind of setup in the NFL this coming season.
No, yeah, I generally agree. I think it's going to be every backer is going to have some lead back that's going to hold value in fantasy football, obviously. But, I agree that Singletary should be the quote-unquote lead back to open the season. But we're going to see Josh Allen use his legs. We could see Zach Moss in a role on the goal line. We could see James Cook be involved in the passing a little bit. So there's going to be guys who have their roles, which is great for Buffalo from a real-life standpoint. But when we're looking at fantasy football and their values and upside, there isn't too much upside in any of these guys because they all have their kind of set roles that they're kind of accustomed to and probably will open the season with. So I don't see too much fantasy value in any of them, or upside, I should say. So we'll go on to the Dolphins backfield. It was a bit of a surprise this afternoon that they released Sony Michel. So now you got Chase Edmonds, who's making the most money, and then you got Raheem Mostert, and then you got Myles Gaskin and Salvin Ahmed. So you assume, obviously, based off money, that Edmonds will lead the backfield, but what his exact role and how involved he will be is the biggest question mark. This is under Mike McDaniel, who's coming from San Francisco. Where they mostly use the committee, they use multiple running backs. And so I think it's generally expected that they're going to do the same type of approach in Miami. I like Edmonds a lot as a talent, but I don't see them overworking him either. So I think we'll see Mostert kind of have a change of pace role on the early downs, as well as Myles Gaskin potentially on the early downs and or in the passing game. Career, are you interested in Chase Edmonds this year at all?
I'm not as interested as I would be in Chase Edmonds, just because the whole Miami offense is evolving and changing. Obviously, a lot of new faces and new changes, obviously bringing in Chase Edmonds and Raheem Mostert and Tyreek Hill into that offense. And you already had Salvin Ahmed and Myles Gaskin. And then they obviously brought in Michel before he just got released today. So now that backfield is kind of clearing up with the two-headed duo of Mostert and Edmonds. I feel like it's going to lead the backfield for this Miami Dolphins team. And then you also have Gaskin and Ahmed as the other two running backs in that committee. But I feel like just because of how many backs are in that committee, I feel like you can't really depend on one. And the way that the way Mike McDaniel was running that offense with the Niners, obviously it was a committee. They had Mostert, they had JaMycal Hasty, they had so many backs. in San Francisco last season that they could use, and it would be the same production. Obviously now Elijah Mitchell as well, and now he's the lead back over there. And so now you go to Miami and you have 4 backs who are capable of being a starter in a week-to-week basis. And I feel like that's way too many ifs and what ifs and all that stuff to really depend on one. From a real football standpoint, obviously, McDaniel bringing kind of a West Coast style offense to the Dolphins will definitely rejuvenate that run game that has not been the greatest but not the worst for the past few seasons. And then obviously now you have Tyreek Hill to spread the field open, along with Jalen Waddle, who obviously set the rookie reception record last year. So Tua now, I feel like he has more options to throw the ball to and use to his ability. And I feel like there's more pressure on Tua this year than just how the running backs will perform, because we know what they will do. But from a fantasy football perspective, I'm obviously still staying away from Chase Edmonds. But it's kind of if you're in a position where you need running backs, I definitely lean toward Chase Edmonds more. Obviously, he's getting more money, but I feel like he'll be used a lot more, maybe as like a 2-down back, and maybe Mostert on 3rd downs, or situations where they need a lot of speed, or just maybe a breakout run. Obviously, Mostert has that speed. So, it's definitely going to be really interesting to see what the Niners, Jesus, what the Dolphins do in that backfield. Now they have 2 pretty fast running backs who are injury prone, but at the same time, I would still stay away from him from a fantasy. Like, I feel like it's a definite handcuff situation. If you get Edmonds, I feel like you kind of have to get Raheem Mostert, just because of how that offense is going to be working next year or this upcoming season.
Yeah, it's definitely. I mean, yeah, I think Edmonds is like a kind of decent RB3 in PPR, because he's going to have that role in the passing game, which should make him somewhat safe in that capacity. But I think his upside definitely isn't what it could have been, without someone else in that backfield. But yeah, I mean, from a real standpoint, it makes sense to have 3 or 4 guys that you kind of rotate in and out to kind of keep everyone healthy. So now we'll move on to the Commanders' backfield. We heard the unfortunate news yesterday of Brian Robinson in the carjacking incident. And so fortunately, it sounds like, I think I saw he's already out of the hospital, if I'm not mistaken. So fortunately, he made it out safe. But in terms of his long-term availability, we don't know, any really updates on that at all. So we kind of, prayers out to him, and it sounds like he is on track to make it back to full health. But for right now in that backfield, we got Gibson leading the way, who was going to lose his starting job to Robinson. And then we got McKissick in the passing game. And then Jarrett Patterson probably behind Gibson right now, who saw a little bit of a role last year. I'm still not particularly huge on Gibson. I think, with the fumble concerns, he was already going to lose his starting job. I think he's still going to be involved on the early downs now in Washington, but it's just not an offense or backfield that I really want any part of. Are you feeling the same way, Korea, or are you a little bit more bullish on Gibson?
No, I'm definitely feeling the same way. Obviously, first off, I hope Brian Robinson is doing okay. Obviously, very scary situation coming out yesterday afternoon with the attempted carjacking that left him. I believe he shot, 4 times. But now he's obviously he's stable. He's doing okay. I believe, I think you're right. He was released earlier. Obviously, he's going to be out for a little while, just recovering from the injuries, and obviously mentally as well. That's hard to deal with, getting shot. So I feel like Brian Robinson was definitely kind of the lead back, or trying to, fight for that lead back position with Gibson, because we saw Gibson get demoted all the way down to the 3rd team, on, fielding punts and kickoff returns, and because of his fumbling issues that continued into the preseason. But now, due to these unfortunate circumstances, it's kind of Antonio Gibson's role to lose at this point, because I don't see Jared Patterson or, anyone else really stepping up into that role, just because I feel like that was Gibson's role to really compete with Robinson. Obviously, I'm not all out on Robinson with everything that was happening. He says that, he's definitely hoping to come back and play sometime this season. Same for Ron Rivera. They obviously want him to just get better first, but, maybe if they're in a situation where Gibson, is just not performing well, and, Robinson may come back later in the season. We'll see what that happens, maybe 2 or 3 months down the road. But obviously, he's definitely going to be placed on the non-football injury list, injury weighted, and I feel like he's going to be missing a considerable amount of time with this. But in the end, I still feel like this Commanders backfield is definitely one to really kind of stay away from as well, just because now that Gibson is kind of thrusted into that running back RB1 role for that team, and we've seen his struggles really just holding on to the ball and being a power back with all his injuries and just how inconsistent he really is. I definitely would stay away from it as well. But it was definitely Brian Robinson's role to lose, and I feel like that was a big just a big blow. No pun intended, obviously, but definitely a big blow to that organization to really not only have to rely on Antonio Gibson, who has been, inconsistent with his ball handling ability, and then, just not really much experience with the other backs with Jared Patterson, and McKissick obviously is definitely more of the passing back in that offense. So definitely unfortunate circumstances, but at this point, it's kind of Antonio Gibson's role to lose if they don't find a potential backup throughout the rest of the season.
Yeah, I mean, there are some running backs kind of on the trade market, so it'd be interesting to see if they potentially look into making a trade for someone like Kareem Hunt, who requested a trade. That's why I'm still not fully optimistic about Gibson. Like season long, but we'll see how that shapes up, and then we'll finish on this topic with the Eagles' backfield. For so many years, it was a frustrating committee under Doug Peterson. And then last year, Nick Sirianni, it was really the same kind of approach with mixing up who they're using each week, kind of like a hot hand approach based on who does the best at the early part of each game. For about a couple weeks now, Miles Sanders has been dealing with a hamstring injury, which is never a good sign. They're saying that they're optimistic about him being available for week 1, but that's still something to monitor. And then we got Kenneth Gainwell in the passing game for the most part. Boston Scott has seen a role on the goal line, and in recent years. So another kind of 3-headed committee type of backfield in Philadelphia. Are you targeting any Eagles running backs?
Nope. I am that if there is a backfield that I am 100% staying away from, it's the Eagles backfield, because Miles Sanders doesn't like playing. Like, first of all, I feel like Miles Sanders doesn't want to play football with how many times he's injured. And then obviously he is anti-fantasy football, so definitely just stay away from him. And I feel like Miles Sanders' production is just going to be decreasing as the season goes along, because I feel like we've seen how Jalen Hurts just uses his legs so much more, and that offense flourishes better with Jalen Hurts using his legs. And Miles Sanders only getting 2 yards a carry. That's not really doing anything for the team, and I feel like that's going to plague this Philly team. And so with that, I feel like Sirianni is now transitioning into a pass-heavy offense, because look who they just traded for. They traded for A.J. Brown, and I feel like him alongside Devontae Smith, who already has that connection with Jalen Hurts, and Dallas Goedert, who's Jalen Hurts is like old reliable right there. I feel like those three are definitely going to be leading the offense, and the running back room is definitely going to be kind of led by Jalen Hurts. Kind of sad to say it, but I feel like Jalen Hurts is going to have a big year on the ground as well, using his ability to scramble and use his legs. And then you mentioned Boston Scott sometimes in goal line situations. Gainwell is more of the passing back. And, well, Sanders, we'll see if he's going to be ready for week 1. Obviously, there's a big question there, but I just don't think Miles Sanders is just going to, I feel like his production will just be decreasing as the season goes on. And I feel like I feel like the Eagles are definitely the one backfield to stay away from. I feel like from a fantasy perspective and also an NFL perspective, I think the Eagles are definitely just going to be more pass heavy. And if running is the only option, I feel like Jalen Hurts will just be able to scramble and use his legs more because I feel like that's where that offense is really beneficial. And without using Miles Sanders, I feel like that's why the offense really was, leading that charge into the playoffs was because of Jalen Hurts using his ability to scramble out and use his legs. So from a fantasy perspective, I am 100% staying away from the Eagles backfield. I'm not even touching them. I'm not even looking at them because I know that Eagles backfield is going to be Jalen Hurts and others, not Miles Sanders and all those other guys. It's Jalen Hurts and others. So definitely staying away from the Eagles backfield as well. I feel like that backfield is just going to be commanded by Jalen Hurts' ability to scramble. And Miles Sanders, I'm slandering Miles Sanders so much, but I mean, he kind of deserves it. I feel like that man is so paper thin. I feel like he's not even. I don't think he's going to have 1,000-yard rushing season. I feel like he's going to come up short again. I feel like it's just going to be, just maybe 700 to 50 yards this season on the ground. Just not used as well. But if he has a great production throughout the first 6 weeks, then I will gladly take my word back. But I know Miles Sanders. I've seen what this man has done. He does not like playing football. I feel like this man does not want to play anymore because he's not using the offense, and I feel like the offense is evolving without him. So that's where I feel like the Eagles' backfield is definitely the backfield to just stay away from fantasy.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's not entirely his fault with his role. It's partially the coaching staff as well. But like I said before, it makes sense from a real life standpoint to utilize 3 running backs and kind of keep everyone healthy. And even with that, Sanders still can't seem to stay healthy, even with the limited role, which is, frustrating as well. But yeah, I mean, I didn't even mention, like you said earlier, about Hurts also is, has a pretty big role himself as a rusher. So you got basically 4 running backs there who have a role as a rusher or receiver out of the backfield. So you'll have guys that that have big games out of that backfield, but nothing in terms of like consistency wise. You won't find that in that backfield. So definitely one to either stay away of, or just kind of be super cautious with. So the next topic I want to talk about was Breece Hall and his role. We know the draft capital is there, 2nd round draft capital compared to Michael Carter, who I believe was 4th round, I believe. So I think Hall is going to have a role on the early downs. The question is if we'll see a role in the passing game. We know Hall is capable at Iowa State. He caught 23 passes in his first 2 seasons and then 36 this past college football season. So he's definitely capable. But so is Michael Carter, who caught 36 passes as well in 14 games in his rookie season last year at the Jets. And so I'm not so sure that Michael Carter is going to be, phased out of the backfield completely early on. And if he's going to maintain the role, it's more likely to be kind of in that passing game role, a little bit on the early downs likely, but mostly on the passing downs. Which is my biggest worry with Hall in terms of his upside this year, as well as just the situation, on the offense, behind the offensive line. That's not very good. So that's my biggest concern with Hall this year in his rookie season. Curry, what's your thoughts on that backfield?
I agree with you. I feel like that backfield is just a lot more confusing because obviously they brought in Breece Hall this year as the future 3-down back now for the Jets, but they also had Michael Carter, who had a pretty decent breakout year last year as a 4th rounder, not really seen as kind of the lead back, with last year having like Ty Johnson and, LaMichael Pirine and a bunch of people in that backfield. I feel Michael Carter was kind of the one guy to shine from that backfield, and now you bring in Breece Hall, and now Michael Carter is being reduced to either probably being in the pass game. And I feel like if Breece Hall is, oh my God, there's a Breece Hall on that team and a Breece Hall. I don't why. So if Breece Hall is going to be used as a 3-down back, I feel like he will be used to the ground. I feel like they may run him to the ground just because that offense obviously in week one, they're not going to have Zach Wilson. So they're going to have to depend on Joe Flacco, mystery lead himself. And we saw him in the last preseason game. He can't even throw a ball past 5 yards without being intercepted. So I feel like they're just going to run Breece Hall into the ground. I mean, yes, he was in the passing game at Iowa State last season, but I feel like that's not going to be enough, especially with that rebuilding offensive line. Already losing Mekhi Becton, one of the stars on that offensive line. So I feel like Breece Hall will definitely be a 3-down back, but they're going to run him to the ground so much that maybe Michael Carter may have a bigger role later in in the passing game. I don't think Breece Hall is going to be in the passing game as much, but I feel like he will be used all 3 downs just because he definitely will have that, young ability to do it. But I feel like they're just going to run him into the ground. And that could be a situation where, that offensive line is not producing well for Breece Hall. And obviously in 3rd down, they may be passing on 3rd and long. And maybe we'll see Michael Carter used a lot more and stuff like that. So I feel like the Breece Hall is definitely going to be used on all 3 downs. But I feel like they're running him to the ground so much with just how the offense around him is looking. Obviously, no Zach Wilson for the first game, but he'll come back probably week 2. And then, losing Mekhi Becton before the preseason, I believe, definitely a big loss for that offensive line. So, yeah, definitely some holes in that offensive line for Breece Hall to really be a 3-down back.
Yeah, there's definitely some question marks, but there's no denying the draft capital and the talent of Breece Hall. So that will be something that I'll be monitoring in week 1 to see kind of what the split is between Hall and Carter. Another backfield we'll move on to is the Ravens. So they placed Gus Edwards on the reserve/pup list, so he's going to miss at least the first 4 games of the season. And so then you got J.K. Dobbins, who they're probably going to ease back, not give him a full role, right away. And so then you got, with how run heavy they are, they're going to use another running back, maybe 2. And so then you got Mike Davis and Tyler Beatty, who are kind of competing for that lead role. One of the Ravens beat reporters speculated that Mike Davis could get most of the carries early in the season. He's kind of the veteran, whereas, Beatty is the 6th-round rookie from this past NFL draft. So I think just from a pure experience standpoint, it would make sense that that Mike Davis gets the kind of the edge early on in that backfield. I still think Dobbins will be involved right away in week 1, just maybe limited to an extent. So that leaves Mike Davis as the potential kind of lead back / just kind of sees more carries than Dobbins early on. But we could see Beatty have a role himself, and we could see all 3 of them, along with Lamar, kind of be used in the rushing game. I know that you were pretty bullish on Dobbins, even though you traded him in our home league. What's your kind of expectation for Dobbins, as well as just the guys behind them heading into week 1?
I feel like that offense is going to be slowly using Dobbins. Obviously, he's coming off an ACL and other knee damage, and I feel like they're still taking their time with J.K. Dobbins. So I feel like that's going to be a slow introduction to his lead role. And so that's why I feel like Mike Davis is going to be used kind of a lot more throughout maybe the beginning 2 weeks of the season, and over Tyler Beatty, because I feel like they want to prioritize Mike Davis. And you mentioned the Baltimore beat reporter saying that Davis will be seeing a lot more carries throughout the first few weeks of the season. So I feel like Davis right now is going to be the number 2, obviously with Gus Edwards being on the being still injured and missing the first 4 weeks of the regular season. You kind of have to have someone. Obviously, there's Lamar, who is a running back himself for that offense, so he's kind of the lead. And then you also have J.K. Dobbins, who's coming back, but I feel like he's going to be slowly coming back into that offense. And then you round it out with Mike Davis, who is going to be the RB2, I think, behind Dobbins. And then you have Beatty as well, the 6th-round pick, the rookie. So I definitely feel like this is J.K. Dobbins and then Mike Davis. I feel like they're just playing it safe for when J.K. Dobbins comes back fully healthy, because I don't think he's fully healthy yet. Obviously, personally, I traded him away, but I just feel like, Dobbins is not going to be seeing as much production as we think at the beginning of the season, just because they want to be really cautious with that injury. I mean, they've been cautious all offseason with with him. First, it was him being placed on the PUP list, and then him breaking the barriers, and now coming off of it. And now the Ravens obviously are still hesitant on him, and the Ravens are still trying to figure out the whole Lamar Jackson situation in terms of his extension potentially. So, there's just so many questions behind in this running back room. I just feel like, definitely Lamar Jackson, if he's going to be committed this season, he's definitely number one. And then you have J.K. Dobbins. And then after that, I feel like they're just going to play it safe until Dobbins is, at least fully healthy and, got most of his strength back in his knees to really be that power back that he was before he got injured.
Yes, definitely. I think they're going to go back to more of the run heavy offense compared to kind of the last couple of years. It seems like they kind of went more towards a bit more of a balanced approach, but I think it was 2019 when they were like super, super run heavy. And it sounds like they kind of want to go more towards that route. And so it sounds like Mike Davis will be number 2 behind Dobbins to open the season. And then maybe Beatty has a role. And then you got Gus Edwards coming back potentially week 5, but possibly maybe a little bit later to have a decent role as well. But yeah, I agree that they're probably going to ease in Dobbins early in the season. One more backfield, or two, we have a couple more, but the split between Melvin Gordon and Javonte Williams in Denver. You look at last year, literally they had the exact same number of carries, 203 on the season. Javonte was a little bit more involved in the passing game. He saw 15 more targets. And now we head into year 2 for Javonte. Denver re-signed Melvin Gordon, but they didn't re-sign him until late in free agency, so they didn't that shows me that they didn't prioritize him because of that. And so I think it's going to be somewhat of, because other than the 1 week Melvin Gordon missed last year, it was pretty much close to 50-50 pretty much all season, with the exception of that 1 week. And now, just based off what we've seen this offseason, what we've heard, even Melvin Gordon said himself earlier a couple weeks ago that they want Javonte to be the guy, as in Denver wants him to be the guy. So I do think that Javonte sees a bigger role this year. That doesn't mean Melvin Gordon won't still be involved. I think it's going to be somewhat of a 60-40 or 65-35 split. And I know when some people think of 60-40, they think of a huge committee and all of that. But if you look at the snap counts last year, there are only Najee Harris, Alvin Kamara, David Montgomery, Derrick Henry, and Dalvin Cook. Only those 5 running backs averaged over a 70% snap share. So when you think of it that way, with how many backfields are moving to somewhat of a committee approach, like a 60-65% snap share is still very favorable for Javonte. In that offense, he's going to see way more scoring opportunities. I think he should see more involvement in the passing game potentially as well. So, I mean, that's what my expectation, but obviously that's something I'm still going to kind of monitor early in the season, beginning in week 1, to see the split between those two. Are you kind of agreeing with my take on that kind of split, or are you seeing something different?
No, I definitely agree with you. I feel like Javonte is definitely going to be taking charge of the backfield a lot more. Yes, it's more of like 70-30, whatever, but they really like Javonte Williams. I feel like that offense is going to be in the run game behind Russ in the passing game. I feel it's going to be Javonte Williams leading that because, we've seen him last year have his ability to break tackles and get those extra yards. And I feel like that's what they really like about him, his breakaway speed and his breakaway ability from tackles. I feel like that's what they really like about him. And I feel like Melvin Gordon, definitely is going to seize his time. I feel like he's definitely going to be used, but I'm not too concerned about this backfield. I feel like it's going to be a lot more Javonte Williams, definitely on the 3-down back kind of scenario, definitely kind of leading the offense. But then, Melvin Gordon will get his time as well. And I feel like that's kind of just similar to how the receiving core is for Denver. You have Cortland Sutton and Jerry Jeudy. Both are going to get their good times in. I feel like Cortland Sutton definitely has a lot more upside. And that's why I feel like same for Javonte Williams, has a lot more upside with age. And I feel like the whole Melvin Gordon situation came, late in the offseason for them to get a deal done. So I feel like they're just prioritizing Javonte Williams a lot more, and I feel like that's what they're going to be doing this year. And that's why I'm kind of higher on Javonte Williams more in that backfield than Melvin Gordon, just because I feel like Javonte Williams is kind of more of the right now running back one of that team. And I feel like Gordon's just a complimentary ad for that backfield.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is an offense that can produce two, fantasy relevant running backs. So I still like Gordon. I still think he can be an RB3, RB4 in fantasy football, but that doesn't impact my stance on Javonte offering pretty easy RB1 upside as well. So I like both of them in that regard, and I think rostering them both as insurance, because if either one misses time, the other becomes an instant RB1 in that situation. So definitely both solid. You just have a few more topics we'll touch on real quick. We'll start off with the Seahawks backfield. Both Rashad Penny and Kenneth Walker are already dealing with injuries. It seems like Rashad Penny is now fine as he returned to practice. I think maybe 2 weeks ago, last I looked. And then Kenneth Walker has a hernia injury that puts his status kind of still in doubt as to when he'll be able to return. We don't really know if he'll be healthy for week 1 or not. But obviously, like I mentioned with Hall, he has the draft capital of the second round, and then Penny has the 1-year contract he's currently on. I feel like this backfield can go so many different ways, really. You can make the argument that the Seahawks are going to, run Penny into the ground on this 1-year deal and unleash Walker in the second season. You can make the argument that Walker, second half of the season could take over the backfield as well. Korea, what's your kind of current stance and expectations for each of them in the backfield?
Look, I honestly have no idea. I feel like they just picked up Penny's option, and I feel like he'll be the lead back, but then again, they drafted for the future, and I feel like Kenneth Walker's the future, and I don't think they have any immediate future plans with Rashad Penny. So this season, I feel like it's literally going to be even split. Who knows? I feel like Penny is definitely going to be leading this backfield. I've seen Bob Condada, the lead reporter for the Seattle Times, lead beat reporter for the Seahawks, also saying that Rashad Penny is probably going to be getting up to 20 snaps per game, according to the coaching staff. So they're saying that Rashad Penny, and that was earlier in the offseason, before preseason started. So, but now obviously with Kenneth Walker's hernia injury, but he's still expected to be coming back week 1. I feel like this split is literally 50-50. I can't really choose a lead back for you. I would say Rashad Penny just because of what Seattle is expecting of him this year, but maybe Kenneth Walker, emerges on the scene later in the season. And then, definitely I feel like this is a repeat of last season with Chris Carson, Rashad Penny, just both healthy now. I feel like Rashad Penny could lead this team early in the season, but then as soon as, Seahawks are maybe, struggling down the way, bringing in the backups, we're seeing how they do. I feel like Kenneth Walker could really emerge as the lead back later in the season, heading into the second rebuild season for the Seattle Seahawks.
Yeah, and I will say I wouldn't completely rule out at least one of Travis Homer or DJ Dallas also having some role in the backfield as well. They both looked good in the preseason and based on reports out of training camp. So, I also like taking a flyer on Walker kind of in the middle, late rounds, kind of in that range. But I get the appeal for Penny, and he's kind of going in that similar range as well. And there's a world where he could lead the backfield the entire season, and then the Seahawks let him walk, and then next year is when Kenneth Walker steps up, or it could be Walker this season. So yeah, it's definitely a lot of unknowns, and I'm kind of hoping Walker's healthy week 1 so we can kind of get an idea if it's going to be a true 50-50 split, and also not just those two, but to see if Homer or Dallas have any sort of role week 1 as well. I mean, obviously it's not going to be the most enticing, appealing offense either, just overall in Seattle. So there's that as well. So just 2 more. One I want to touch on is Deebo Samuel, if he'll still have his role in the running game, which is really a large part of his success last year. There in this new contract, there are incentives for rushing, and so that leads me to believe that he is going to still have a decent role. I don't think he's going to have as big of a role as he had last year in the rushing game. Part of at least what he was talking about, why he wanted out initially, is because he didn't want to have that type of role in the rushing game, take those hits on his body. But I think it's pretty clear that a large part of his success as well revolved around that kind of wide back hybrid role as well. So I still do expect him to have at least a decent role in the rushing game, a good role for a receiver, I will say, in the rushing game compared to most receivers, obviously, who are not involved at all in that role. Are you expecting him kind of maintain that role as well, or what do you think?
Personally, for me, I feel like it's going to be limited just because obviously there's Trey Lance, this is kind of why the reason they wanted to stick by Lance, because his dual threat ability to throw the ball and, his ability to run on the ground. They already have Elijah Mitchell in that backfield still, and along with other guys like JaMychal Hasty and more to go down the roster. And then Deebo Samuel's kind of the wide receiver one, but then obviously Ayuk and Lance have had like a good connection, throughout the preseason as well, and throughout just training camp heading into the regular season. So I feel like Samuel will be limited, but I still think he will be involved in the run game. Obviously, you mentioned the incentives in his contract where, if he rushes for a certain amount of yards or whatever, then he definitely gets some more money in terms of his contract. So I feel like he'll be involved, but I don't think he's going to be involved as much as last year just because of how slim that running back depth was. With you have Jimmy Garoppolo, obviously more of the pocket passer, and then the running back committee was just injured by the week, and so you didn't really have an RB1, and so they had to really strategize, use jet sweeps with Deebo Samuel to get some extra yards. So I feel like that won't be as prevalent this year, but I feel like they'll sprinkle it in maybe a couple times, to really change up the offense. But I don't think it's going to be as productive on the ground as last year compared to this year. I feel like it's just going to be more in the passing game, racking up receptions instead of, being more involved in the running game.
Yeah, I mean, looking at last year, he had 59 carries for 365 yards, and he had 8 rushing touchdowns, which I think is definitely going to take a step back, but I still think he's going to get maybe 35 to 40 carries, which is still really high for a wide receiver, obviously. So, I mean, if you can even get that and maybe like 4 or 5 rushing touchdowns and maybe, let's say, bump his 6 receiving touchdowns to up a little bit, I think that could kind of balance out, losing a little bit of rushing but getting a little bit more in receiving in terms of his kind of total numbers in the season. But, yeah, I still think Deebo is going to – obviously still going to be a key focal point of that offense, as I think we all expect. So the last topic I want to touch on is the Rams backfield. There is a report that came out yesterday on Sunday that Akers still wasn't fully up to speed in practice, and Darrell Henderson was. So that kind of raised some questions as to if Henderson might lead the backfield week 1 for the Rams. And then just today, this afternoon, a report came out that both Henderson and Akers were practice fully just today. And so there's still some question, for Akers' health. The big question coming off the torn Achilles, we talked about it before, we've never seen a running back literally ever return to form coming out of torn Achilles. On the other hand, we've never seen a running back. On the other hand, Akers still has the youth on his side. He has the situation on his side. And I think, being able to get his feet wet late last season, returning is beneficial as well. Not having to worry this offseason about rehabbing like he did the previous offseason. Or I guess, he suffered it early last year. So, but yeah, returning late last season, and right when he came back, he had a pretty big role. So that shows you the confidence that McVay has in Akers. I know McVay has commented highly on Henderson, but he's done that before as well, and he still ran Akers. He still gave Akers a clear lead role. So I still think it's going to be clearly Akers' backfield. Whether that happens week 1 is a little bit more of a question mark. I think just season long, I think Akers will be clearly back, but depending on how healthy he is week 1, maybe it's more 50-50 week 1, and then maybe more 60-40, 65-35 a few weeks into the season. if Akers is fully healthy by then. But this is one thing that I will be watching week 1 to see if Akers is how healthy he is, as well as how healthy Henderson is, because they've both been banged up this offseason recently. But according to reports, they're both fully practicing right now as of Monday, August 29th. So 10 days before the season starts, or 13 days before they have the first game on, or no, they're on that Thursday. They're on that Thursday. So 10 days before they have their game. So what's your kind of thoughts on this backfield? Are you kind of optimistic about Akers, or are you kind of more on the side of cautious, just given the torn Achilles and the history of that injury?
I mean, yeah, there's the history of the torn Achilles, and, it's definitely not good for a running back. But at the same time, the way Cam Akers rehabbed all last season to make it to the end of the season, to make a playoff run with that Rams team, I feel like that is kind of a key part of his rehab and why he is already probably going to maintain his workhorse role. I don't see it changing too much, obviously. I think McVay obviously wants to see Akers have a full season under his belt and see what he can do under a full season fully healthy, and I feel like that's what's going to happen this season. I feel like Henderson's definitely going to be involved in that backfield as well, but I feel like that's Cam Akers' lead role to lose. I think that Cam Akers definitely has that youth behind him as well. And yes, he missed a large part of the last season, but the way he came back and impacted that team immediately for postseason success to lead him to the Super Bowl, I feel that's going to carry into this season. And I don't think either role is going to be diminished. I feel like Cam Akers and both Darrell Henderson are going to have decent roles in a high octane offense like the LA Rams. But I feel like Akers is going to have a more of a workhorse role just because, he doesn't have a full season under his belt. And I feel like this upcoming season will really prove to why Cam Akers is such a vital part of that Rams offense. And I feel like Cam Akers will maintain his workhorse role, but I feel like, they'll sprinkle in Darrell Henderson here and there. But right now, the way Cam Akers, and you mentioned both as of today, are practicing fully healthy. So the way Cam Akers is looking like that offense is just going to be Cam Akers leading that backfield, but then they'll sprinkle Darrell Henderson here and there.
Yeah, I agree. Like I said before with this split, like snaps, like even a 65-35 split, let's just say, or 60-40 even, is still enough for Akers to be really good in fantasy football. And Henderson is good as an insurance, right behind him. So it's kind of a backfield that's a good one to kind of handcuff in that situation. So that was all I had, Korea. Was there anything else you wanted to touch on?
No, it's been a long one, but we will be back on Wednesday. Wednesday, we're going to do a mock draft. As one more, for some people who are still drafting, as we finally hit the 1 week mark before the regular season starts on Thursday. We're doing one more draft to get some last minute advice. As the season starts and as the preseason wraps up, we've seen a bunch of battles, and now they have been finishing, and so we'll go over all the people who are released as well, and then lo and behold, we're here. NFL is back next week. College football returns on Saturday. So we'll be just doing a lot of football content throughout these next couple of weeks. But if that's it, that's Ari. I'm Korea Pounds. Thanks, guys, for coming back with us. I know we've been long gone, but, hey, we have lives too. We get busy. But we're going to be making sure that, as we go closer to the beginning of the season, that we're giving you guys the best advice, best information, whatever you guys want to do. To get ready for your fantasy football drafts if you haven't had them yet, or if you're just wanting to hear some hot takes about college football and NFL. So that's Ari. I'm Korea. We'll see you guys on Wednesday for our mock draft. Peace out, guys. We will see you